relatively brief. I want to talk about video conferencing. One of the reasons for doing that is to inaugurate and help us better understand exactly what is possible. I think much of what we deal with is kind of a crisis of imagination, a crisis of how we think things can get done. But a lot of that comes from exactly the venue we're in right now. We live in interesting times where effectively, I'd argue, diverse fora are broken. We're sitting in one. Conferences are broken. We've all dealt with this. You create a panel, you have strangers added to them. You've not selected these individuals. We have no idea exactly why they're there. They join. There's 7 people that are presenting. There's 2 chairs. There's 5 discussants. You get 3 seconds to present your piece, and then you have to go. You've received no comments that are useful whatsoever. No one paid attention to your work. Welcome to conferences. Now, it doesn't have to be the case. Then there's also workshops, right? But good luck. Not many places have them, and if they have them and you finally assembled the group to put it together, then someone leaves. Or someone becomes a toxic personality and they start showing up. So, okay, so how do you start to avoid these 2 things? Well, a large point is to try to identify the fact that technology provides an answer that we can actually use to try to resolve some of them, hence the conference. Well, we can move across individuals, institutions, space, time, topics. We're no longer constrained by a lot of this. We no longer have to schlep ourselves to whatever to get to some place to talk about some type of work. My particular, we're using Google Hangout for the Conflict Consortium virtual workshop, but we have other options. We have Uvu, this popular video chat application, and we have Jitsi, which is interesting if you're kind of security conscious, because basically you can get an encrypted kind of domain going, and there's another one which is also kind of interesting where basically you can set up fora that are on the fly. It moves between servers. No one can track it. It's really kind of fascinating, but I don't want to talk about that one. So Will and I started this Conflict Consortium virtual workshop in part because we were trying to overcome a bunch of these things simultaneously. We kept identifying that there was a couple of conflict scholars there, one there, and we were trying to figure out a way to kind of get them together. So part of it was we started doing like conferences within conferences. So we're all at ISA. We find some venue that was off-site and allow all the conflict people to go there and kind of like hang out. In addition to that, we realized there was also other limitations. We were just like, let's try to overcome that significantly by trying to have this virtual dynamic. Well, how is it helpful? Well, the goal of the workshop is to improve the research being discussed. Critiques are internal, not external. One of the participants provides a critique. There's no presentation. We try to get rid of all performative aspects of the thing. It's all about trying to generate information for you. And we give you, we say erudition displays are discouraged. There's so much posturing in the damn profession, it's just hard to just like get down to business. And so we try to kind of get rid of as much as that as possible and get to what's going on. And the participants must provide as much assistance as possible to the individual, and it's hard to kind of cultivate that, but over time we think we've done it. We do it for an hour and a half, and it's just like, yes, an hour and a half on your research by more than just yourself sitting there, perhaps with like one friend. But that sustained element we thought was initially kind of, we were like, how could this possibly work for an hour and a half? But it's incredible exactly how that works. And it's incredible exactly how much there actually is in our own work that needs to be discussed that we never have a chance to discuss. In addition to kind of like this forum, we also started to kind of institute after conferences, and I don't know, I'm always dissatisfied after a particular panel. I'm like, why doesn't the conversation continue? It can continue online. Just like reconvene, start to have these conversations, start to extend the work because you put in all this time to do this stuff. So we're trying to kind of facilitate as much as possible in terms of recollection or reflection, because who's going to remember what anyone said right now? Well, part of the whole thing is if you videotape the thing, you can then go back and watch it. You don't have to keep notes, because you know how the thing is in the conference. You're caught up on momentum like I am right now. Someone says something, you start kind of rolling, you're responding back to it. You forget to take a note. You forget to kind of like have all these things that are kind of like could help you out. But if we're videotaping these things, then we can actually get to that. It's largely lively, the conversation. Part of the difficulty, as you know, with many academics is just to keep things going. We don't have that problem with this group. This is one of the reasons for selecting them. They're all highly engaging, and this is where we wanted to go. The other guys, we're specifically trying to build networks. We're trying to get senior scholars with junior scholars. We're trying to match male with female. We're trying to get different forms of conflict, peace, and violence research, different disciplines, different methods. We're not as interdisciplinary as we'd like to be, but effectively we're trying to push in this particular direction. But we're trying to overcome a lot of the limitations that we have in the profession with regards to all the imbalances that we find. So Since 2013, we've had 35 sessions, 185 different scholars, 100+ institutions, 7 countries, 3 fields, and 2 emulations, or that's Will's nice word. I'm just like theft. People just like stolen it. But we want people to steal it. We want people to take the content. We want people to take the particular fora. We want them to take this model because we have it. Let's start using it a little bit more consistently. Where are we going? It's like, now I'm dating myself, right? Mo Better Blues, old Spike Lee movie. Sorry, always love the title. So we're gonna have more sessions, we're gonna have more formats. We started data features, we're gonna have a policy feature. The data feature was basically like, you have a data set, no one paid attention to your JPR data release. Okay, well, let's have a conversation with you about the data that you collected that no one's using. Let's have a conversation with you about how it could be used. Let's open it up for people to kind of have that conversation. Policy feature. I was in DC for this thing, The Future of War, with a bunch of generals, which I don't generally like, and a bunch of policymakers, which I also don't generally like, but it was also useful to kind of actually have this conversation, be like, okay, well, what should we talk about? How should we talk about it? Let's put them on blast. Let's put them on a forum where these people are actually able to more or less interact in a continuous basis, and we're seeing this conversation, because a lot of people needed to be in that audience to see exactly what these people were saying and how they were saying it and framing it and so forth. Design feature, talk about research design. Teaching feature, talk about the thing we hardly ever talk about. There's a section on teaching and political science. I don't know about you, but I never go. I'm like, we should integrate it more profoundly. They should have greater access to the rest of us. We're going to try to reach out to more scholars, more universities, institutes. We're tapping India, South Africa, China, and Brazil, but we want more countries involved. I mean, especially international studies, right? I'm like, I don't know how about you feel about it, but I'm like, we're woefully underrepresented in terms of the different parts of the globe. More fields. I think there's psychological elements behind mostly what we do, but we don't hang on. I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily like most psychologists. But we need to actually interact with them on a more consistent basis and facilitate that type of interaction and find the ones that do want to interact with interdisciplinary audiences. Demography, computer science, and effectively we're trying to get as many people as possible to steal the thing, and that's where we want to go. Thank you. Okay, it's open.